Good morning, students and faculty of Indiana University. I hope you've had your morning cup of coffee because today we will be discussing affirmative action.
Affirmative action is a program that was created to help alleviate social injustices against minorities by providing affected groups with more opportunities.
This program plays a significant role in education, mainly the college admissions process, by accepting more students with minority backgrounds, which sparks debate about the fairness of the program.
In higher education, it is important and necessary because it creates a more diverse learning environment and helps socially disadvantaged groups.
The public liberal arts institution, Indiana University, does affirmative action as accepting students into the university.
Specifically, affirmative action was brought to attention by the 4% protests, which revolved around protesting on Indiana University's campus since there were only 4% Latinos and 4% Blacks in the entire student body.
The campus hopes to remedy this by creating programs such as Hudson Holland, Groups, Black Student Union, La Casa, among other minority cultural centers to help students feel more at home rather than excluded.
The university should concern itself with affirmative action because it is a public research institution, meaning anyone, regardless of race, should be allowed to enroll and participate.
In today's broadcast, we will be telling you all about affirmative action and why it is necessary in higher education. First, we will be going to Pyle with breaking news.
Thank you, Jacqueline. Hello, this is Pyle Patel reporting breaking news about the benefit of affirmative action in creating a more diverse learning environment here at Indiana University. College is a place where students interact with other students of diverse backgrounds from all over the world on a constant basis. Factors such as hometowns, family dynamics, racial background, and socioeconomic class all contribute to creating an engaging learning environment in the classroom setting. These discussions are vital to learning because they open an individual's mindset on how to perceive the world around them. I'm here at the Forest Residence Hall to talk with a few students about their experiences regarding diversity in the classroom. How would you describe your classroom environment here at IU in regard to diversity?
I would say that my classes overall are pretty diverse. We have a lot of mixture of different races and genders as well.
I would say that a lot of my Kelly classes tend to be a little more male dominated, but the majority of my classes are fairly diverse.
Yeah, my classes are fairly diverse. If you see one, what would you say would be a downside of having a class of only people of the same socioeconomic class, family dynamic, or race?
I would say that there would be a lack of different opinions, so I feel like it's better to have more opinions in a room than just people all thinking the same way.
Yeah, conversations with different perspectives.
You need different viewpoints to formulate a good community. Based on the students' answers, it's evident that the difference of opinion created by diversity contributes to the learning environment in the classroom setting. Many years ago, Anthony Blissing Antonio and Chris Gonzalez Clark conducted a research study about the impact of cross-racial interactions on higher education. In their 2012 article titled Rethinking Research on the Impact of Racial Diversity in Higher Education, the authors included a comment by student diversity researcher Patricia Guerin, who said that racially diverse interactions enhance learning because students learn more from different modes of thought rather than content. Affirmative action thus contributes to student success by fostering the creation of complex thinking with the diversity that's allowed on campus. That's all I have to report. Back to you, Jacqueline.
On Sunday, the first enslaved Africans arrived in Jamestown, which marked the beginning of slavery in the United States. That caused a huge storm and eventually became a tornado. Monday, the storm ended and it became a little sunnier, and that was the day the Emancipation Proclamation was issued, which stated that all persons held as slaves shall be free. On Tuesday, the 13th Amendment was passed, which abolished slavery, although it did not end slavery in all forms. So it was pretty cloudy with peaks of sunshine. On Wednesday, it was a very dreary, rainy day because it marked the end of Reconstruction, which was the beginning of Jim Crow laws, which reinforced racial segregation in the South. Thursday was another dreary, cold day, and that was the day the Plessy versus Ferguson case took place. Homer Plessy was an African-American man who was in the whites-only railway car, and when he was asked to get off the bus, he refused. The Supreme Court ruled that separate but equal is not unconstitutional, which upheld the racist qualities of the country. Friday was a much sunnier day because Brown won in the Brown versus Board of Education case, which declared that separate is in fact unequal, and that was to be carried out in deliberate speed. Saturday, the weather was all over the place, starting out cloudy when Arkansas Governor Orville Faubus refused to let 9 students into Central High School, but it cleared up when Dwight Eisenhower called the federal troops to escort the 9 students in. African Americans in American history have experienced terrible weather because of racism and structural inequalities. Because of this, programs such as affirmative action are needed to make up for all that they had to experience and alleviate these social injustices.
Hi, I'm David Alvarado with AA Sports with everything affirmative action sports, and I'm here to give you the outlook on who is on the fast track to higher education for this upcoming season. Based off of average educational resources and social environments, we've come up with our annual power rankings for 2 tiers of races and ethnicities. Coming in at the top tier, we have white and Asian students. Really no surprise here, they usually come in at the top of the power rankings. Came in top last year, year before that, and pretty much every year for the past, I'd say about like 150 years. Let's take a look at what are the factors playing into the disparity between Tier 1 and Tier 2. Well, Tier 2 is filled with African American and Hispanic students, and the lack of access to outside help in school and the low average income amongst these students killed them at the end of the season. It just seems like whatever they do to try and help out, Tier 2 just keeps on running into the same kinds of problems. These tiers haven't changed in years, and the second tier just can't find a way to make their resume better to get into higher education. They simply have gone winless since their inception when Tier 2 was allowed to educate themselves. And now we're off to Carlos Moreno with our special guest, Carl Darnell.
And we're going to ask him a few questions about the 4% rallies that he led on campus multiple years back.
My goal is to raise awareness of the issues that are going on at IU as it pertains to issues dealing with African American students, Latino American students, Native American students, and the quota that it seems like IU has, a quota cap on the representation of domestic, traditionally marginalized populations on this campus.
So you're saying that like affirmative action at IU has a cap and they aren't using it as properly as they seem that they should be?
Well, I don't think there should be a cap at all. I believe that there should be a drive. And I want to say around 2007, the Board of Trustees actually said that they would double the representation of African American, Latino, Hispanic, Native American students on this campus within 7 years. 2014 hit and they hadn't doubled anything. Black representation on this campus was still at 4%. And it seemed like it topped off, it capped off, it leveled off at 4%. To let students know that however you're doing in class, or if you got into IU or you didn't, it's not about you, it's not about your worth. You're smart enough, you're capable enough. There's some other systems in place that are preventing you from being able to come here or being able to be successful here. And we wanted to bring awareness to that and really empower and strengthen the students to know that we're going to try to help you to graduate.
What caused you to like finally open your eyes and see that this was actually happening here?
Right. So when I came in 2010, I was a program mentor and an instructor for the Hudson Holland Scholars Program. And I heard that between groups in Hudson Holland, that was most of the minority students on campus. It's like, well, I wanted to look further into that, and I had some students from my Hudson Holland class who, when they would come in my office for their lead requirements, would ask me questions about my experience in college. I'd ask them questions about their experience in college. And as they told me more and more, I realized that in a lot of their classes, they were the only black student or the only Latino student in the entire class when they were in. So I started looking into the numbers. I know that at Tennessee State University, my former institution, they had a fact book that they put out every year. And as a public institution, you could look at the fact book and see what counties the students are coming from, what states the students are coming from, and what's the breakdown of the race and ethnicity of the students. So I looked for the same thing on this campus. And here it was called the UIRR, the University Institutional Research and Reporting. And in there, I saw that representation of African Americans was 4%. And I went to a couple of meetings. I spoke to some people who worked in the registrar's office in different parts around campus. And one of them sent me the historical enrollment of IU by ethnicity. And on that, I found out that from 1975 all the way up until that time, which at that time was about 2010, 2011, we had virtually been exactly 4% black. IU had been 4% black since the time they started first looking at ethnicity and recording it until that current day. Because students would ask me, well, what about Asian American students? What about Latino students? I was like, okay, let me look in the records. And I looked. And they started off at much lower numbers, but they got up to 4% and stalled out. And African American, Latino, Hispanic, and Asian American students were all at 4%. And that's why I felt like it was more than a coincidence. It was more of an actual cap. I don't think that IU should have a cap in place. And if they said they're going to double the representation, then they need to double the representation.
That's all we have for today. We'll catch you next week on our broadcast about frat hazing. Have a nice afternoon, Indiana University.